Hello, I'm Gail, and we're going to continue our discussion about freedom from the fear of rejection. We've been talking about the common defenses that people use to protect themselves from that kind of rejection. And the one we want to talk about tonight is called building a wall, an emotional wall that keeps us protected, we think, from fear of rejection. God opened up my eyes to a whole new understanding of what I had done to protect myself from fear of rejection. And it was a conference that I went to several years ago. And I was excited. There were people there that I was going to meet, and it was just a learning conference as well as a fellowship kind of conference. So I was really glad for that break and to be several days there. But the first evening, the keynote speaker, a gentleman, started with this statement: breakthrough to the next level begins with brokenness. Wow, that captured my attention. I just sensed that it wasn't just any ordinary conference, but God had a purpose for me to be there. And it was to do work on my heart. So the speaker continued to say, not your efforts, but brokenness is what will lead you to a new level. Then he said, God will hit us where we've built walls. We all build walls. Sometimes God will send a customized arrow into our heart to wake us up. And do you know what happened then? I literally had pain in my heart. And I sensed God saying, your wall has kept you at a distance from me. I was heartbroken to think that I had hurt the heart of God. Totally unconsciously. I didn't know I had constructed this emotional wall. And as I look back, I constructed it, again, unconsciously, just to protect myself from rejection. Any unfortunate things people might want to have said to me. But in reality, it had built a wall between God and me. So as soon as the man finished his talk, I hurried to my room, and you can imagine, I just had to talk to God. I had to confess. I had to talk about how sorry and sorrowful I was that I had hurt him. And of course, the forgiveness poured in. But he also gave me a picture in my mind, and I grabbed my briefcase and I just started sketching. And there were three distinct things on my foundation. One was childhood patterns, defense mechanisms, family expectations. Those were the three things that came to my mind that had formed the foundation of this invisible but very real wall. And on top of that, I began to put my bricks. I labeled them things like fear of failure, fear of disappointing people, fear of not measuring up, fear of being known was one of them also. Really surprising. So once I had that picture, it began to crystallize in my mind that I really had a wall and that it was keeping me from connecting with people in a healthy way. And I had chosen bondage when God wanted me to have the abundant life that he describes in John 10:10. But I had chosen to hide instead. And what happens when a person hides, and when I was hiding, it stunted my spiritual growth. I just was so focused on not being rejected. And I couldn't apply faith to the conversations I would have with people. I couldn't process emotions just as I would be acting with friends. I couldn't process it because I didn't want to reveal what was inside of me in case they didn't really like who I was or what I was doing with my life. And so God's work of transformation was totally hindered because I wasn't giving him a chance to work in my heart. John Morgan wrote a book called War on Fear, and he talked about phony castle walls. It was so descriptive. I felt like I was in a castle and I could look out the window, but I was fully protected. But it's just this phony wall. And I was still the fearful person that I had become. So as I began to see from God's perspective, I realized that he did not want me to hide anymore behind these invisible walls because I had become just so disconnected. I was aloof. That was a habit that I formed, that I thought, again, was protection for me. But I was totally missing out on the joy and the privilege of interacting with people. I was missing out on just this growth, this coming to the new level that God really intended. So that was an absolute turning point in my life. And I'm just wondering if any of you, just even as I've talked, have realized maybe I do have a wall. Because if you do, you just need to talk to God about that. And he will help you break down that wall. He'll give you the strength and courage to do that. And again, in another video, we'll be talking about how specifically we can tear down that defense of building a wall that separates us from people, but also is separating us from God. Praying for you as you continue to walk on this journey of freedom from the fear of rejection.